Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thanks for tuning in here on Wednesday, January 17th, a freezing cold morning in Duval County. Really appreciate y'all being here. So, today we are getting into the Jaguars' top roster needs entering the 2024 offseason. Keep in mind, when we talk about these needs, these can change based on cap cuts. Those can massively impact what the Jaguars' needs are entering free agency. There's a lot of players on the roster currently that have pretty big cap numbers that the Jaguars can save a substantial amount against the cap in 2024 by parting ways with. Cam Robinson, Brandon Sheriff, Darius Williams, Foley Fatukasi, Zay Jones, Rayshon Jenkins, Foye Oluokun. And I'm not suggesting that these guys will go or that they will all go. I do not know how it will play out. But they can save a lot of money by moving on from some of the expensive contracts on their roster. And that is a roster mechanization that could potentially impact the Jaguars' top needs, right? So we will see how all that plays out. But we're going to talk about the top needs entering the offseason as the roster currently stands. And now the needs could also change based on the defensive coordinator hire. If the Jaguars hire a defensive coordinator that wants to run a lot of man coverage, Wink Martindale, who's apparently supposed to be in town about now, they do not have the corners to run a lot of man coverage right now. So you could see the top needs impacted by that as well. Now, based on what we know, we're going to get into these top needs right now. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. Just got some new Leaping Jag holographic stickers. You can check it out, genjag.com/shop. So these top needs, for me, we're going to go in order. I've got 5 top needs. I think that they are all pretty substantial needs for the Jaguars, starting with center. This is the biggest need. It's not the greatest position in terms of value, right? Centers are not among the highest paid players in the league, but the Jags need a center. Luke Fortner, while I really liked him coming out of the draft, coming out of Kentucky, I thought that he had a decent rookie year, and that if he was able to build on that in 2023, that you could have a pretty good center. But he did not build on his rookie year. He regressed. And I think part of the problem for me is he was an older prospect. And I was able to overlook that because I really liked the tape. I really liked what you saw. But I think when you have an older prospect that needs to develop physically, that can start to be a red flag. I think that could be a cautionary tale for the Jaguars and for everyone out there. This was a prospect that he was 24 years old entering his rookie season. That is older than a lot of the guys you're going to see by 2 to 3 years, right? As rookies. So when you talk about not only was he older, but he also needed to develop physically in terms of his strength. You know, unlike Tyler Shatley's strength is not his strength. That maybe should be a red flag. Okay? He needed to develop strength going from year 1 to year 2, and it did not look like he did that. And it looked like it impacted his confidence, his inability to hold up and sustain against what was a gauntlet, absolutely a gauntlet in terms of the interior defensive line play that the Jaguars were faced with all year, some of the guys that he had to go up against, but it wasn't good enough. It wasn't close to good enough. It was awful. It was some of the worst center play that we've seen in Jacksonville. There's been some pretty good center play in Jax throughout the Jaguars' time as a franchise. It was not good center play in 2023 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was okay in pass protection, but I think that they helped him out a lot there. And he was one of the worst run blocking centers, if not the worst run blocking center in football. Unfortunately, again, this is a guy I really liked coming out of the draft, but I think it can be a lesson learned in terms of older prospects that still need physical development. The Jaguars cannot be stubborn with this situation. Even though Trent Baalke is the one who drafted him, Doug Peterson was here when they drafted him, they have got to realize the error that they made and go try to fix it this offseason, whether that's in free agency or the draft. Either way, you cannot go into 2024 with Luke Fortner as your starting center. Hate to say it. Good guy, smart guy. Liked him as a prospect. Still like him as a person. I think he's a good guy, but can't do it. They also need help next to him at guard. They currently still do have Brandon Sheriff under contract at left guard. I still think that he's a quality starting guard. I think over the last couple years, he hasn't been saddled with the best situations. Playing next to a rookie Luke Fortner in 2023 in 2022, and then playing next to a Luke Fortner who actually regressed in 2023, playing next to rookie right tackle Anton Harrison in 2023, who did very well for himself in pass protection, still needs to grow as a run blocker in a big way. I think if you have better, more experienced guys next to Brandon Sheriff, and obviously Anton Harrison will be a year more experienced in 2024, and hopefully you have someone new at center, that you should be okay at right guard. Now, again, major cap savings if you decide to move on from Sheriff or extend his contract, restructure it, what have you. But I think at left guard, there's absolutely a major need right now. And again, the interior of this offensive line, I believe, especially at left guard and center, was the biggest weakness of this roster in 2023, and it still appears to be the biggest weakness entering the 2024 offseason. Ezra Cleveland is a free agent, right? Walker Little, they experimented with him at guard. He's a much better tackle, bottom line. So right now, I don't think you have a quality left guard or a quality center. You've got to find a starter at guard and center at the very minimum when it comes to the Jaguars' interior offensive line. I believe that in a very strong way. I believe that the Jaguars, so many people talk about their scheme just not making sense this year offensively. And it didn't. One of the biggest reasons that it didn't is because they had zero confidence in the offensive line, in the interior of the offensive line, holding up in pass protection for any amount of time and creating any push in the run game. They did not feel confident on 3rd and 1 that they could run the ball twice on 3rd down and 4th down and pick up a first down. They didn't. Not up the gut. They had zero confidence in that. And I think that that's a big part of the reason that the scheme did not make sense this year. Zero confidence in the interior play, in the trench play up front. They need a new center and they need a new guard. Bottom line. A lot of folks will argue that they need a second guard. And I'm not here to really belabor that point or argue that point. The fact of the matter is, if you do feel that way, there is a path towards the Jaguars having 3 new starters on the interior, and Brandon Sheriff would save them a lot of money if they decide to move on. I will give you that. Interior defensive line is my next need for the Jaguars. They have 2 guys that aren't going anywhere from a contract situation. Devon Hamilton and Roy Robertson Harris were both extended last year. If you decided you wanted to move on from either of them, you save zero money by cutting them. Could you try to trade them? Yeah, but what would you get realistically? I don't know if a team would trade for their contracts right now. I really don't. Maybe for Devon, because a team could sell themselves on the idea that, well, he had a really unfortunate back medical situation last offseason. That's not going to happen again. And with a full offseason to get back to full health, he could play like the guy that you saw in 2022, which was an excellent interior defender. I think that's what the Jaguars should be trying to sell themselves on right now anyways. Devon Hamilton playing more like the guy you saw in 2022 than 2023 would be very good for this interior defensive line. But still, Foley Fatukasi ended up being a bad signing a couple years ago. You're able to move on from him and save some cap space. Even if he sticks around on the roster, I don't know how you look at this group, this interior group of Devon Hamilton, who, you're still hoping gets back to who he was prior to the back situation. Roy Robertson Harris, who has never been consistent. He'll have these 3, 4, 5 game stretches throughout a season where he is able to rack up a ton of pressures and create a bunch of penetration up front. And then Foley, who's injured a lot, and even when he's on the field is pretty just average. That's not a good enough group. It's just not. Bottom line. They do not hold up well enough against the run. I mean, God, against the Titans in that season finale, it was That was some of the worst trench play I've ever seen in my life. It was pathetic. Those linebackers were getting they were getting those offensive linemen on them in a flash because the interior play was doing nothing for the Jaguars defense. So, point being, you have got to get better. You've got to get more stout, and you've got to get more penetration. You need both of those things on your interior. Again, Devon Hamilton and Roy Robertson Harris aren't going anywhere. I think Foley Fatukasi probably is. There's a lot of interior defensive linemen in this upcoming free agency class. Obviously, some of them will re-sign with their current teams, but you've got to try to get one of these guys that's going to upgrade your roster in a big way, in my opinion. Not good enough on the interior. And that, you look at that. Interior offensive line and interior defensive line are your top needs. That is poor roster building, poor roster management. Absolutely. Now, next need, edge. They have to sign Josh Allen. He is a free agent. If you look at their edge group right now, it's pretty much Trayvon Walker, Yasir Abdullah, right? That's about all you got. So you have to bring back Josh Allen. It's the easiest decision on the planet. I don't think you should have to use the franchise tag. I think you give this guy what he needs to stick around in Jacksonville long term. But then you also have to add depth. Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker are not enough by themselves. Good pass rush units have 3 or 4 guys that can really rush the passer at a high level. So you've got to go find edge depth, whether that be in free agency or the draft. And you've got to bring Josh Allen back. Good teams rush the passer at a high level. The Jaguars had 2 guys that got a lot of sacks. They had 1 guy who was an efficient pass rusher in Josh Allen. You know, Trayvon Walker was able to make splash plays and make big plays here and there, which is absolutely important for a defense. There's no question about it. But he wasn't a consistent pass rusher down to down from a pass rush win percentage. So, yeah, they've got work to do at edge. And that's so sad when you talk about 2019 first-round pick edge, which has turned out really well. 2020 first-round pick edge. Not going to be on the team next year. 2022 first-round pick edge. I mean, they should have an arsenal of edge rushers, and they really only have 1 consistent edge rusher right now. And he's not even on the roster. Josh Allen. You've got to bring him back. So, bring back Josh Allen. Add edge depth. I think through free agency, you've got to add an edge. You can't just rely on a rookie, in my opinion. I think you should add edge depth in free agency and in the draft. My final big need for the Jaguars is receiver. Calvin Ridley is a free agent. They need to bring him back or address the position heavily. If they don't bring him back, I think you have to sign a free agent. I think you also have to draft a player relatively early. This receiver room is not enough. Christian Kirk, a very good slot player. Evan Ingram, basically a very good slot player as well. You do not have outside ball winners. Even when Zay Jones is fully healthy, I think he's an average wide receiver 3. He's being paid like a high-end wide receiver 3. I don't see that from him because for every big play you can go back and look at from Zay Jones early on in 2023, throughout the season in 2022, and there were plenty of them, there was bad plays for every big one. There really was. I mean, inconsistent with his hands. A guy that has had a couple of the worst games you've seen from Jaguar receivers in a long time. When you talk about just getting peppered with targets and not being able to bring anything in. So again, Zay Jones, I like him. I think he is a team leader. I think he's a guy that helps the culture in Jacksonville, although he has had the off-field situation, which I don't know enough about this past offseason or this past year. Bottom line. From a talent standpoint, from a production standpoint, I think Zay Jones is an average 3 at best. So for me, you need guys on the outside that can go get the job done at a high level. And I don't think they have that right now. Can Calvin Ridley be that if he has a full offseason after playing a season, right? Had 2 years off prior to the 2023 season, almost 2 years. So can Calvin Ridley be that? Probably. But if you re-sign him prior to the draft, you're giving up a second-round pick. You have to factor that in. If you don't re-sign him prior to the draft, I believe the franchise tag, and this is not confirmed, but I believe if you use the franchise tag on Ridley, it's a third-round pick instead of a second-round pick. That could be an option, but if the Jaguars need to use the franchise tag on Josh Allen, which, again, I don't think they should, that option goes out the window. So there's a lot of different things going on here with the Jaguars roster, a lot of different needs that they need to address. But again, for me, it starts on the interior of the offensive line, center, guard, then the interior of the defensive line. Then you have to look at edge and edge depth, and you have to look at receiver. There's a lot to get done this offseason. The Jaguars should be in a championship window. This was a team that looked like they might be in a championship window when they were 8-3, even though I sat here and told y'all this is not a Super Bowl team. This is a team that might win a playoff game the way they're playing right now, because even at 8-3, there were myriad problems with the way the roster was performing. So, again, the Jags got to get some stuff done here this offseason. They've got to improve. They've got to hire a defensive coordinator. They've got to hire a defensive staff. We'll see how it all plays out, but these are the top needs for the Jaguars entering the 2024 offseason. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. Y'all have a good one.